You're listening to the Zero to Somewhere podcast with Nick Palmisano and Albert Zoe.
Welcome, everyone, to Zero to Somewhere podcast. We're back. It's after Thanksgiving, except it's actually not after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're about to go.
We're acting right now.
Yeah, we're pretending to be after Thanksgiving.
It's actually right before Thanksgiving. And so I apologize for Albert the liar.
Yeah. So we already talked about this before. If you're in the agency life, you are now in peak Super Bowl busiest time of the year. It's the equivalent of in the accounting industry from January to April for creative agencies that deal with e-commerce and nonprofits, which is us.
It's literally just about everybody is having their Super Bowl right now. If you're e-com, you're Super Bowl. Yeah. Nonprofit, Giving Tuesday's coming up. Agency, you've got to make sure everyone's taken care of.
Yeah. So unless you specialize in Valentine's Day, like you only work with flower companies.
Yeah.
And so, because flower companies, their Super Bowls like Valentine's to Mother's Day.
Do you know whose Super Bowl it isn't right now?
Whose?
The New England Patriots, because that's going to happen in February.
The New England Patriots do look good.
They look good.
So this is the busiest we've ever been. As everyone knows, when we started this agency, we were with 7 employees. So think back to, do you remember last Black Friday?
Yeah, it was like I was so happy at how chill my life was.
No, you weren't. It was already hectic.
No, I mean, but it was nice though. It was nice to not have I didn't have to fulfill Ranger Up orders for the first time.
In comparison to your previous world, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier to handle the content that we needed to get out for our customers than it was for
when I went home,
Ranger Up.
it was like home. It was like, oh, there's really nothing to worry about right now.
So we're in, like we said, we were in the busiest part of our year. Something that our team is not really used to right now is client revisions. It's something we've kind of had to teach everybody how to deal with this. This comes from I remember reading this book called Trusted Advisor, and it talked about how there's no such thing as a win-lose relationship. There's lose-lose and there's win-win. There is no win-lose.
Yeah, I agree.
And so for us...
I agree. That guy should have just asked me instead of writing an entire book.
Yeah. You could have written it.
I could have written that book. And it would have just been one line.
Do what people that pay you say to do. But we're in this right now where we have a lot of team members who aren't as used to this. So talk a little about our philosophy on how we handle, let's say, challenging requests.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general terms, we want to take care of people and we don't want to get into relationships where we can't take care of people. So, if you have a customer that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much output you put out, they're never happy, we are losing.
That's right.
We cannot win if somebody is never happy. It becomes a miserable relationship. And it ends up not being worth it because I subscribe to the philosophy of if you call me at 2 a.m. with a crisis, do I get out of bed? If I fucking hate you, probably not. I probably would because, that's me. But asking people to get out of bed, asking employees to, hey, man, I'm sorry to hit you on a weekend, but can you help out with this? I don't want to do that for people that are never happy.
Well, it's also part of building a business. Hiring people is also you want to give them a good place to work. Now, a lot of people say well, you're getting paid to do a job. You should do it. It's like, dude, if you subscribe to that philosophy, the problem is no one will work for you. Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest challenges right now in the great, what they call it, the great resignation, is the reality is a lot of people have a lot of options of where to work. So right now what we've taught our team to do is hey, listen, if they want to make a request, step 1, we're in design. So doing the exact same thing they asked versus doing a new creative iteration.
Yep.
It actually probably takes a little bit less time to do exactly what they said sometimes.
Yeah.
So our first step has been, number 1, do exactly that. Mm-hmm. Step 2, then give them another one.
Then do the thing you want to do and see which one they like more.
And
but you can't just do your thing and be like, no, this one's better. People don't like that. Even if it is better, no one likes that.
Yeah, I equate it to plastic surgery. And I said it earlier today, and I'm going to say it again. But you know what I mean? The plastic surgeons that do, at the end of the day, if the patient is going to do this, it's you have an obligation to do the best you can.
If you go in with a boob job and you wake up with giant lips, you're not going to be happy.
That's right.
Even if they look great.
But
even if your lips look great.
That's right. But if the patient says, "Hey, I want an F cup," and you do all your consulting, and then at the end of the day they still want an F cup, That's what they want.
That's what you want. That's what they want.
Put it on them and then be like,
what they
yo,
want.
there it is.
And so, speaking of F cups, we should probably introduce our guest.
So that's where we are today. We're tackling on these challenges. They are somewhat interesting, but Nick, you have assured me that our guest today has a more interesting story than that.
This is one of the most interesting guests we've ever had, and we have like this long, kind of tangled relationship where like we didn't really know each other.
You and me, or you and our guest?
No, I mean we don't have a relationship. I have to sit next to you. It's like I have no choice. But
we just work together.
So Nate Quarry, crazy childhood, right? Crazy childhood. Then on his own, working in fields, like picking crops, doing backbreaking work. Then UFC superstar, huge fights. One of Ranger Up's fighters, Jorge Rivera, and Nate fought. During that event, I'll tell that story later. We'll hold that story out for now. And then when he decides to leave MMA, starts of all things, a comic book, a graphic novel called Zombie Cagefighter. Nate, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start with where should we start? That's such a great story arc.
Yeah, I mean, I think we start. Where does your you clearly have repeatedly taken a lot of risk, but you've also done it in areas that require a tremendous amount of work. Where does that come from?
So yeah, I guess I have taken a lot of risk and been involved with things that take a lot of work. A big part of my story, I think, would be no one ever believed in me. And when I say no one, I mean absolutely no one. I think if most people that are out there, they could at least see their home life as support. And that's such a huge thing. And it's so basic as well. You're raised in a household with unconditional love and support. So you go out there, you try things, you attempt to make something of yourself out there in the world. You fail miserably. You go back home, they pick you up, dust you off, tell you to go back out there again. You have this launching pad. And for me, I didn't have that. In fact, I had the opposite, and not jumping ahead too much in the story, but my father told me later on in years, he said flat out, I intentionally held you back. I didn't want you to know all that you could accomplish. Because for him, becoming a Jehovah's Witness, and now I'm jumping all over the timeline, was a huge thing for him. But then raising his kids as Jehovah's Witnesses didn't work so well for us, myself especially. So he wanted to control where I was going, because for him, being a Jehovah's Witness meant living forever in a paradise on earth in God's kingdom after Armageddon. And me being the guy that, no, I want to go out and live life and explore things, he had to shut that down as much as possible. So from a very young age, I just had to accept that mindset that if I don't believe in myself, no one else will. And I'm the only one that does. So I'm going to go out there and see what happens. And throughout my life, it's been, well, what's the worst case scenario? I fail miserably and I'm right back where I'm at. I look stupid. Well, I've looked stupid many, many times. That's nothing new. I failed over and over again. That's nothing new. So I'm just going to take a shot again. And I will say my parents, and they told me this at one point in my life as well, we raised you to be a worker. And that's true. That's the only time I ever really got any acknowledgement of any value, was when I would work myself to death. And yeah, I was in the fields picking berries, and on a good day, I could make $20 a day, and half that money went to clothes and the other half went to me, which was, that was a fortune for me. And then fast food and construction work, insulating underfloors, starting at age 15, did that for a couple summers, painting houses, framing houses. After high school, I went to work for a sign shop. I became the shop foreman, journeyman installer, all that stuff, because I had the work ethic. And I always felt like I was meant for more, that I could do bigger things. I just had to find that pathway. And I got very fortunate to come across the UFC at the right time and say, once again, I'm going to take my shot and see what happens. And what's the worst case scenario? I fail miserably. I get knocked out in front of millions of people. So be it. It is.
So so you mentioned the UFC came around the right time. Were you already training and fighting? Because how did someone make that decision? Obviously, you had to be fighting it in some capacity, be like, oh, I'm kind of good, I can try this out. Or did you see the UFC first and say, okay, I should learn how to fight?
So being raised a Jehovah's Witness, I was not allowed to do any sports as a kid at all. And man, I was the stereotypical super nerdy kid. I had big, thick glasses on, garage sale clothes. Then I had the benefit of being in a Christian cult who was not allowed to have any friends outside.
I like how he just subtly slid that in. I had the benefit of being in a Christian cult. Not a big deal, dog.
So, I was a chick magnet from 13 on, obviously. In 7th grade, I'm in middle school where there's a school assembly and they put on a demonstration of the wrestling team. And there's this 8th grader that I just know of who's also kind of a nerdy guy. And he wrestles against one of the cool kids in class. He wrecks that cool kid so badly. It looked like it was pro wrestling, the way he's suplexing the guy and tossing him all over the place. I'm sitting there in my seat, dying inside. Because I'm just saying to myself, I know I could do that. I want to do that so badly. But if I went home and I told my parents, I want to wrestle, even if I said, look, I'll still be a Jehovah's Witness. I'll go to church all the time. I'll go door to door. I'll give talks. I just want to wrestle. It's in the Bible. There's nothing wrong with it. Set aside the beating that I would have taken for having that kind of an ideal. It would have been, you are an embarrassment to our household. You are an embarrassment to God, because that is not what God has in store for us. So it was just from that point on, it was just this dying inside and this rage building up in me of all these things that I wanted to do. And at one point I even told my mother, if Armageddon comes and we do live forever on this paradise on earth, I still only get one childhood. And I don't get to do any of the things that I want to do as a child. But of course, it fell on deaf ears. In my teenage years, I was allowed to get a weight bench. So I would lift weights, and we had a VCR. I recorded Bloodsport off of TV, Rocky IV off of TV, and I would watch them over and over again, edited down versions, so they were safe for my virgin eyes. But I would just lift weights and watch Rocky IV. And I can sing every song and know every single line. But this anger just kind of kept building up inside of me. But this is all that I knew. This was my entire life. In my early 20s now, I'm getting more and more burnt out. I'm more and more unhappy with the lifestyle of Jehovah's Witness. And at some point, I make the decision, I would rather die at Armageddon than just continue living this life. And so right around that time, I'm at a party, a get-together with a bunch of other young people in their early 20s that were also raised Jehovah's Witnesses, that were kind of trying to figure out if they were going to stay witnesses, if they were going to leave. And there was a UFC on. And I still remember the guy that came out to me and he says, dude, you got to see this. There's these two guys beating the hell out of each other in a cage on TV. My first thought was, who would do that? That is just bizarre to me. In this day and age, get a real job. Why would you want to do something like that? Then I go inside and I see Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie fighting. And what amazed me so much was the skill that they displayed. But even more than that was at the end of the fight, they stood up and they shook hands and they hugged. And it just blew my mind that, oh, this isn't violence. The intent behind it is sportsmanship. It may look like violence, but these are two men that have agreed to meet in this cage in front of millions of others. And at the end of it, they found out who was the better one. And they're going to shake hands. And that just blew my mind. I felt like I'd been lied to my entire life. And then, of course, drinking at this party with my buddies, we start wrestling around. And none of us know anything. We're going through doors, getting smashed into washing machines. The next day, I'm at home with my roommate, also a Jehovah's Witness, who's kind of thinking about on the way out. And I open up the phone book and I'm looking at martial arts schools, because this had been just something I've been dreaming about. You know, as a weak, angry kid, this is like the epitome of strength. And no one's ever going to bully me again. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. And I see a gym that's teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Jeet Kune Do. And my roommate says, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's the shit they were using on the UFC last night. All right. And I called up the gym. It just so happened that the coach was there. He convinces me, I'll come in for a week, try out the classes, see how you like them. So I go down there with nothing. At some point a few years prior, I tried to escape the Jehovah's Witnesses as well. I took 6 months of Kung Fu. I didn't really relate to this new journey, but that was all that I knew, that and lifting weights. So I show up and I do an hour and a half of kickboxing, and it was terrible. The people holding mitts were the other students, and they're moving around, jab, cross, hook, move around, jab, cross, hook, jab. It was terrible, but it was better than nothing. Then we get an hour and a half of jiu-jitsu. I get tapped so many times. I get beat up so badly that I'm sick for 3 days afterwards. I'm just completely torn apart. But as I'm leaving the gym that night, I said to myself, I'm going to keep coming back here till I can beat every one of your asses. And that's what I did. And it took years. But I remember the first time I tapped out my coach. We were working on a drill and I caught him in a triangle. And I even told him at the moment, I said, I'm writing this on the calendar. This is huge. This has been a couple years of training.
I want to set the stage. How old were you when you walked into the gym?
24.
24 years old. The first day he walks into the gym.
Wow.
You mentioned that you had struggled with money up until that point.
You
said you had nothing.
I say,
How
wow,
much?
for those of you that have never done martial arts, 24 is extremely old.
But it's also young.
To start a martial art and get to the level that he achieved.
That's the key, right? He started it. That's like saying you're going to pick up a basketball at 24 and get a tryout in the NBA.
Because most of the dudes that are getting into the UFC right now started something at like 4.
No, it's
like whether it was jiu-jitsu or wrestling, they did something at 4.
MMA is more like today, like basketball, hockey, like they all played when they're kids, and they've mastered their craft up until now. So it really is the modern day equivalent of walking in and picking up a basketball for the first time at 24 and be like, I'm going to get an NBA tryout.
So Nate is from my favorite era of MMA, where most of the dudes that achieved the highest, they were all just tough as shit.
So
like they weren't going into it because they wanted to be like MMA superstars. It was like, I want to be the best fighter.
It's exactly what you said. He wanted to prove himself as the best. Let me ask you a question. You were 24 years old. You mentioned money was a problem also at the time. You mentioned you said you went to the gym with nothing. Well, how'd you pay for a gym? How much money did you have? What were you doing?
I went to the gym with nothing behind me, no right. skills or anything. At that point, I was making 24. I think I was making $17 an hour as the shop foreman and as the journeyman sign installer. So from my perspective, man, I was doing great. I bought my first house at 26. So that was a little bit further away.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's solid money though. This is like 90s, 2000s.
This is 96 or so. Yeah. 96. Okay. And it was one of those things where when I showed up to the work, so I got kicked out of Jehovah's Witnesses twice. Once when I was 19, and I became involved with a worldly girl, and the witnesses said, you can no longer be a part of our organization, so they kicked me out. It was the worst self-imposed time of my life because I lost every friend I'd ever had. I lost my family, and I lost my job. And so I went at 19, went from a social life, at least hanging out with other Jehovah's Witnesses, to being by myself 24 hours a day, not even leaving the house for a job. And it was just brutal. And especially because being a Jehovah's Witness was all I knew. That's all I was raised with. You're not allowed to read any books outside of the organization. Everything is controlled from books, movies, TV, friends, what jobs you can have, what family you can associate with. So when they kick you out of the organization, you lose everything because they gave you everything. When I came back then, I started working for a worldly company, which was a sign shop that I applied at, and just as a grunt to just lift things. And I think the line I was told to use on the person giving me the interview was, "My name is Nick Quarry. I like to lift things. I want to learn how to paint." And so, because they needed a grunt, they could do hard work and wasn't afraid to do a good job learning how to paint sign faces.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And within, I think, 2.5 years, I was the shop foreman. Within 3.5 years, I was a journeyman sign hanger. It was a 4-year program, but I put in a lot of overtime and a lot of work. And every once in a while, I'd see my boss's paycheck, and I could see that I was making him a substantially lot more money than when I first started. So I was putting in my time and working my hours. And I've always been relatively good with money. I've definitely made a few bad investment decisions here and there, but just been smart and hardworking for the most part.
So you're beating everybody in the gym. At what point are you, do you kind of, enter the big leagues, so to speak? Like, when do you start working out with, all the dudes that, that you end up, Couture and all that whole crew?
So I start training at 24. Around a year and a half later, Randy Couture walks in the gym. And he had just won the big UFC tournament, his first go round. It just so happened he lived a half a mile from our gym. And one of my training partners was just the guy that he opens up the phone book, sees Randy's name, calls him, and says, "Hey, Randy, we're the best gym around. You should come train with us."
Oh, no.
Hey,
So Randy
lesson
showed up.
always.
How bad did you smoke Randy?
My claim to fame that day was I scissor swept him. And
That's
it was
pretty
like
good, man.
Cat. His back hit the mat and he bounced right back up. What amazed me so much. So again, we're just the
scissor sweep
warehouse doing some jujitsu and some kickboxing. We really don't know much. It was the Straight Blast gym. Matt Thornton was the head coach, who's like 6'8", 6'10", something like that. And his weight ranged anywhere from 225 to 285. So he was the gym superstar. And then Randy Couture shows up. I had never even seen anybody that could do a 5-minute round, like a 5-minute MMA round. We would rotate guys in on him every minute or 2 minutes to give him a 5-minute round because none of us could keep up. And immediately I was like, holy shit. So this is what an actual athlete is like. This is not a hobbyist. And again, I didn't know any athletes. I didn't even know anybody who went to college. And now here you got this world champion wrestler who's now fighting in MMA, who's doing all these things and is so incredibly dominant. I just saw him and I said, all right, I'm following that guy around. I don't care where he goes. I'm hitching my wagon to that star and seeing where we go. And I just made it a point to be there for his workouts. The first UFC that I ever went to, he was getting a rematch against Pedro Hizo. And I made sure, I was like, Randy, I'm your guy. I will be your training partner. I'll be here at all your conditioning workouts, whatever it takes. And I'm still working a full-time job at this point, but I'm going to be there for you as much as I can. So I went to him and I said, I'm going to go down for this UFC. If I can be of any service to you at all, just let me know. And he said, well, usually Robert Fallis corners me, but he's going to Pride in Japan with Dan Henderson. So why don't you come down and corner me? Because I'd been around enough. I knew his game, and I'd been cornering in small shows.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, a small show is no different than a big show. It's all the stress you put on it. Whether you're fighting in front of 5 people or 50,000, you're still fighting one guy.
Yep.
And so from my perspective, I get down to Vegas with Randy. I'm like, give me your schedule. I'm your guy. You're my priority. I don't care if I'm on TV. I don't give a shit about any of that. I want to see you win and be successful. And from then on, I just kind of made my way and was there. It was not too long after that, I think, that they actually started Team Quest. And because Randy had started a gym called Performance Quest, but he was too busy doing other stuff. He wasn't able to keep it going. Then he decided to start Team Quest with Dan Henderson and Matt Lindland and Robert Fallis as the gym manager, teaching the classes and the coach there and all that. So now we had more of a stable place to go. And at one point, I went up to Randy after a Sunday practice And I said, hey, I want to fight for you on your team. And he said, well, we don't really have a team. It's just me and Matt and Danny. I said, oh, yeah, I get that, but you should form a team, and I want to be on it. He said, oh, all right, that's a good idea. So then he comes back and he's like, all right, well, we started Team Quest for up-and-coming fighters, so let's go. And from then on, it was, well, let's get whatever fights I can, and I'm always ready and in shape. I show up to corner guys, promoter would come up to me and say, what do you weigh? Like 205. Sweet. Don't eat anything. I think I got somebody who'll fight you. I'd step on the scales, and 24 hours later, I'd be fighting some random dude. And it was just always being ready and having the attitude that the worst case scenario is I show up and I get to watch fights and I get to help my team. But maybe because I'm in shape and I'm ready to go and I brought my mouthpiece, I'll be able to fight. So let's see what happens.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, it's a totally different mentality. And I'm trying to imagine, are you still working at the sign shop now?
No.
So
yeah, and every once in a while, I just tell my boss, I'm like, hey, man, I need Friday off, and I'll be back Monday, hopefully not beat up too badly. And I'd be gone for the weekend. I'd come back with a black eye, limping around a little bit. Be like, can you work? Well, of course I can work.
Did the customers ask questions like, yo, why is my sign guy like look fucked up?
Why does he always have a black eye?
Yeah, why does his just face look like he's been mauled by a tiger?
So what was your big moment? What was your big moment? What was the moment where you jumped forward?
Okay. How long of this story do you want? Everyone, I determined a long time ago, everything in my life was going to be a story. It was going to be a highlight for somebody. Maybe not for me. So 2002, I'm still working at the sign shop. Well, let's reverse just a little bit. 9/11 happens. I wake up in the morning. I see the towers going down. I'm sitting there watching TV, just going, oh my God, we're under attack. I don't know what to do. After a couple of hours, I'm like, I guess I need to go to work. I'm the shop foreman. That's my job. So I go down to work. I end up going to a gas station where we're going to change all the sign packages, take it from a Chevron to a Shell or something like that. I've got the work van there and I've got the stereo blaring so I can hear the news, and I'm measuring shit. And my boss rolls up in his Mercedes, and my boss looks exactly, and I'm not exaggerating, like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
Like a decrepit old creepy man.
He gets out of the Mercedes, and I look at him and I go, my God, what a day. And he looks at me and he goes, you don't know the half of it. They changed the whole sign package here. We're going to have to change it. I was like, wow.
Customer. We just talked about that earlier. Customers when their changes.
So I was just kind of blown away at the importance of this gas station compared to the other things in the world.
Now, did he know it happened?
Oh God, yes.
Okay. All right.
And also, so we would do a sign package. So when I say that, you drive up on a Chevron station and they have a look, they have Hallmark signs, you have these lighting, all this type of stuff. So my job would be, we're going to go out there, tear down everything that says Chevron, build all the new stuff that says Shell, go install that.
Yep.
Well, then a couple weeks later, a Texaco rep would show up at the gas station and say, hey, we'll pay you 2 cents more a gallon if you switch over to Texaco, and we'll pay for the whole sign change. So then I'd be tearing down everything else I did and then building a Texaco station. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, I really don't want my legacy to be I made signs that got torn down 2 weeks later so somebody could make 2 cents more a gallon. So I'm having kind of these mental struggles and feeling like, man, I just feel like I'm meant for more, or I could do more out there in the world. And then it's April of 2002. I've been sick for a week. I show up to work and my boss starts yelling at me about something, some job that went wrong while I was gone. I'd hired my brother and he screwed up something. And
Brothers.
I told my boss, like, dude, I wasn't even here for the week, and whatever it is, I'll look into it and make sure it works out. And this Mr. Burns looking motherfucker looks at me and he says, do I need to go in the back and make sure everything is done right? And I looked at him and I said, when you talk to me that way, you don't motivate me to work harder. You make me want to get my shit and go home. And he said, well, maybe you should. And I stood up,
And
I
there-
walked into the back, I grabbed my toolbox, and I drove off. And I called my coaches and I said, all right, guys, I'm a full-time fighter now. I just quit my job. Find me
Wow.
fights. And the most I'd ever made at that point was like $400 or $500.
Yeah.
I had a 2-year-old baby. I had a mortgage.
Yeah.
Dang.
I had no idea what I was going to do, how I was going to make this work out. But I just said over and over again, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to fail miserably, and then I'll be right back where I started. I can do that. That's okay. And then later on in that year, that summer, so now I've been excommunicated from Jehovah's Witnesses for a few years. So I have very minimal contact with my family, with my parents. The way it works with Jehovah's Witnesses is they can contact you in a family emergency. And generally that means when they have an emergency.
What a nice
they will
loophole.
contact you.
Yeah.
You're excommunicato. Oh, wait, I need help.
Exactly. I need help, not so much.
Yeah.
You need help. Hit me up. So that summer, I get a call from my folks that my father is dying. His bone marrow has quit producing red blood cells, and he's essentially slowly suffocating as the red blood cells die off. And that November, December, I went and I spent the last 3 weeks of his life with him and kind of helped prepare for his passing, help get the finances in order, help refinance the house that they could no longer even afford to live in. They were living in a rental someplace else and renting out the house that he built with his own 2 hands. And I'm seeing my father just completely fade away. And I went with him to pick up his final paycheck. And he was passing out at the wheel, driving home. He was still working in construction for somebody else at a job that he didn't want to do, didn't find enjoyable. And 3 weeks later, he died. And that week that he died, I had to go to my mother and say, I've contracted to take a fight on the East Coast. I have a title out there. I need to go defend my belt. I feel like I've done everything that I could here. And it was just a horrific time. You know, the worst of it was 3 a.m., the door swinging open and my mother crying because my father had gotten up to use the bathroom and he passes out on the floor. And then hoisting my father's near lifeless body up off the floor, putting him back into bed and seeing my mother crying over him as he's slowly slipping away. But I told her, I've done everything that I can. I need to go do my job now. And for the first time ever, she said, well, if you said you were going to do something, you should do it. So I said goodbye to my father, flew to Richmond, Virginia, had a horrible weight cut in a gym that was 50 degrees inside. They wouldn't turn up the heat. It took me like 2 or 3 hours to cut like 4 or 5 pounds.
Oh God.
And it was so bad that I took off all the gear, got on the scale. I was still 2 pounds heavy. I had to put all the wet, cold gear back on, get back on the treadmill that didn't have a motor. I had to push the treadmill.
Hey, people pay a lot of money for that now.
Yeah, that's the new fancy treadmills now.
And that Friday, as I'm rehydrating, I get the call that my father has just passed away.
Oh man.
Finished the dinner that we were at and got back to the hotel, and Coach Ward was there cornering me. And I told him my father just died. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, if I wasn't going to fight, I should have stayed home. I'm here to fight. That's my job.
Yeah.
And so the next day, and it was the usual where I'm fighting somebody with, I think he had 3 times as many fights as I did, 4 inches taller than me. And I'm in the back just with my head down, and Randy's coming up to me, and we compete very differently. He's like, man, I'm excited to be here. Let's go put this on him. And I'm like, this motherfucker's trying to take food out of my mouth. This is my shot. And so he's trying to get me pumped up. And I just look at him. I go, Randy, I'm not in a good mood. And I ran across the ring and landed a three punch combination, bounced out, saw all of his punches go short, landed another combination, bounced out again. He goes to clinch with me. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not even going to fight this takedown. You want the takedown? I'll beat you standing. I'll beat you on the ground. I don't care. And he gets the takedown, and he's kind of hovering up above me, and I upkicked him. And he's still there, and I upkicked him again. And he was still kind of hovering, and I threw one more upkick, and he moved his head, and he came in, and I slapped on a triangle. And he based up really tall, but he left his arm behind. and I just snapped his arm, and he was just tapping.
Oh.
And I let go. Referee jumped in, broke us. And I jumped up and just started running around the ring, just screaming my head out, letting all the emotions and everything that had been building up in me for months just pour out of me. And I look down in the corner, and there's this short little guy. And he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, my name is Joe Silva. I'm the matchmaker for UFC. I'm going to keep my eye on." So when they went for casting for The Ultimate Fighter, Joe Silva called me. Said, "We want you to try out for the show. We're going to do a bunch of filming and come down here and try this." So it was really that year, 2002, when I turned 30, that I really made the leap of quitting a job that I just felt unfulfilled at, seeing my father pass away at 62 with nothing but debt and regret, and me deciding, once again, I'm dying to everything behind me, and I'm being reborn, and this is how I'm going to live my life. And I just keep going through it. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to fail miserably. I've done that over and over again. I just pick myself up again. So I have a big phoenix tattoo on my right side, because whether it was leaving the religion, leaving a job, starting a new path, it always had to be, I'm leaving all of this behind and I'm being reborn in this new path. And let's see how it goes.
Yeah, it's when you look back, so like how all these other stories combine together, because they've also famously, granted, UFC was backed by brothers. The Fertitta brothers are already billionaires. They were doing great. But they've been on record many times saying, like, if Ultimate Fighter didn't work, they were going to throw in the towel because it was losing money hand over fist.
Yep.
And so, like, that was their last hurrah. This is,
yeah. And for
so many, like, last hurrahs for so many people
if you
to,
don't,
like, make it.
If you
and
don't
it all
know,
worked out.
Joe Silva was also a minority owner in the UFC, and he was the UFC matchmaker.
Yeah.
So back in the day, super smart guy, really interesting character, but like the least imposing human being in all of MMA.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, I think Joe's like 5'5", 5'4". I mean, he's not tall, but he was the power guy.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to get in, you had to go through him.
He was a Midas man.
So like him on the sideline, I mean, that's a pretty wild.
No, it's a wild, because the thing, Nate had every reason to say, well, I'm not doing this.
I'm not doing it. Yeah. And if
and would you have gotten a chance? Who knows? But like you did, and you did. So it's amazing how that kind of thing works out. The fight game, everyone knows in professional athletes, short window of time. And I know this podcast is about business, right? Yeah. Most of our listeners are not going to be professional athletes.
It's true. That's a fair. We've had one other thus far.
Who?
Tim Kennedy.
Oh yeah, but he don't count.
Yeah, he's in group, so I guess it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah. So I mean, not to skip your career, but like for the timeline of the show, like, so you enter the UFC at its like ascension, right? Talk about that experience of like picking up fights now, and now you're getting paid more. But we also know that a fight career is short. And so talk about how you transition to your next thing.
Well, as you said, with fights, you're only as good as your last fight. You never know when your last fight is going to be, quite frankly. Any crazy injury, anything going wrong can completely screw with your whole plan. And for me, especially, so I make it into the UFC and I win my first 3 fights by first round knockout. I beat Shoney Carter, who had 5, 7, 8 times as many fights as I did. His record was in the 100.
Wow.
And I was like 12-1 or something. And now I'm fighting Shoney Carter and beating him in the first round. So they offer me a title fight against Rich Franklin. And in retrospect, I wasn't ready mentally more than anything. I didn't know who I was as a competitor, as an athlete. I didn't know how to go into that mindset, especially for one thing. So at this point, Couture had left Team Quest. He was now down in Vegas doing his own thing. And Robert Follis was the head coach. He was there with me. The Tuesday or Wednesday when we're there in Vegas training, I'm hitting the mitts and I'm starting to get a little mean and hitting him hard. And he says, "Stop. What are we here for?" I said, "I'm here to win a title." He goes, "No, we're here to have fun." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, he's my head coach. He must know what we're really here for." And so you can actually see me laughing and making jokes as I'm walking out to the cage for the fight. And then I get hit. I'm like, "Holy shit, this isn't fun.
This feels terrible.
I'm not having fun."
And it took me a while. And again, and let me make 100% clear. Every fight that I ever won, it was because I had an incredible team around me and these great athletes that could iron sharpens iron, these coaches that would make me a better fighter. Every fight that I lost was my fault. I did not deliver. I did not come through. The fighter was better than me. There's backstory to all of that, but what it comes down to is it's my responsibility. I lost the fight. And so with my loss against Rich Franklin, a few months later, I couldn't even pick up my little girl. It turned out that I had a disc that had collapsed in my lower back, L203, and she's 5 years old at this point. And I remember her saying, Daddy, pick me up. And I just said, I can't. I'm crippled. And I go to the doctor and they explain to me that this disc, the shock absorber, completely worn away. And they want to do this relatively new surgery, a spinal fusion in my lower back. No one has ever heard of a success story with back surgery. No one.
No, totally agree.
Everybody that I talked to said, if you get back surgery, your life is over, your career is over, you'll never pick up your little girl again, just deal with it. Pat Miletich himself said, hey, when are we going to see you fighting again? I said, well, Pat, my back is really screwed up. I'm going to get this surgery. And he told me, don't do it. If you do it, your career is over. I said, Pat, my career is already over. If I don't take this shot, I don't know where. I know where I'm going, and it's nowhere.
Yeah.
So I end up getting this surgery, and it was miraculous. It worked incredibly. And it was just that the whole technique of it was different. Instead of slicing through the muscle in the back or slicing through your abdominals, they came in from the side using a guide wire to go through the psoas, scraped out what was left of the disc, and hammered in a spacer and allowed it to fuse. And within 6 months, because that's how long it takes a bone to heal, I was back at 100%.
Wow.
And it was terrifying. I mean, I'm having just panic attacks thinking about this surgery. Am I making the right decision?
Yeah.
I had no one to talk to. No athletes had ever had a surgery like this. And there was no community support group that I could talk to. So I ended up getting this surgery. And from the day one, it's just, well, I'm going to walk and I'm going to heal and I'm going to eat properly. And I'm going to do everything I can to get back. And at the 6 month mark, I go to the doctor and he says, all right, you're healed. You can see the fusion has taken place. You're no longer in pain. And I said, well, doc, I'm going to fight again. What do you think? He said, give it a shot. See what happens. That was the most encouragement I gotten the whole time. And I went from his office to the gym and started sparring that day. And over the next few weeks, my confidence just started to gain from guys like I'm training with Josh Haynes. And he shoots a double leg takedown on me, picks me up off the mat, slams me, and drives his shoulder right where my spinal fusion was.
Shit.
And I was like, shit, I'm broken. This is all over.
This is it.
And I was like, wait a minute, no, I'm fine. And I got back up and kept sparring. And I shot a double on him. I picked him up and slammed him down. I was like, all right, I'm good. A few months later, I call up the UFC and I said, let's make this happen. You know, I'm ready. Nobody thought this was possible, but here I am ready to go. I want Caleb Sarnes for my comeback fight. He'd just beaten Chris Lieben. And I thought it was a bullshit decision. I was like, I'm going to get vengeance for Lieben on Caleb Sarnes. So Joe Silva says, that sounds like a great fight. I'll call up Caleb. Joe Silva calls me back and he says, Caleb won't fight you. Says you're not worthy of a fight with him because you just lost your last fight against Rich Franklin and he just won his. So we want you to fight Pete Stump in a rematch. I was like, God, that's going to be a tough fight because Pete's been fighting and training for the past 2 years. I've been having surgery and switching teams and have all of this going on. But if that's what it is, so be it. I'll fight Pete. I'm going to beat Pete. It's going to be tough. But then I get to fight Caleb Sarnes. And when I do, I'm going to end his fucking career. And that's what I did. And in the middle of all that, I contacted the company that did this back surgery. And I said, you guys aren't going to believe this, but I'm an MMA fighter. I fight in the UFC. I just had your surgery and I'm looking to return to fighting again. So the company flew me down to introduce to their sales force because the company's named NuVasive. They're a medical device company. Yeah. So they sell screws and the implants and everything for this procedure. So they're having their big sales meeting. Well, the CEO finds out that this knucklehead cage fighter is coming down without his approval. And he just makes it clear to everybody, all right, fine, it's too late, but whatever you do, just don't let him speak. Well, you can introduce him to the crowd, show some video, whatever, but don't let him talk. So I get up on stage and I'm wearing a polo shirt and I'm looking as respectable as I possibly can with these ears. And they introduce me to the crowd and they show some video and everybody claps. And I said to the guy, hey, give me the microphone. I got something I want to say. He's like, no, you're done. Get off the stage. No, I really have something I want to say. Give me the microphone. It's like, no. You're done. Get off the stage. Give me the microphone.
One of us is going to win this, and it's not going to be you.
And he just hands me that microphone. And I turned to the crowd, and I didn't really have anything prepared to say. I just wanted to speak from the heart. And I said, yes, I'm a cage fighter. I'm looking to return to my employment as a cage fighter. But let's be honest with you. That's entertainment. I couldn't pick up my little girl. Now I can. I feel that everybody wants to feel like they're making a difference in the world. You people are doing that. Thank you for giving me my life back. And the place just erupted, just standing ovation, people going crazy. Now I'm being grabbed by the guys that told me, don't let him speak. And they're shaking me going, oh my God, you just motivated an entire sales force. And the reason why I tell this story was because then it went on to become me working with that company for another 14 years as their spokesman and telling them that when I went through this surgery, I did it alone. I had no one to talk to. I was terrified. You're having these sales reps going out and talking to the surgeons, and the surgeons have to talk to the patients. But I've been down that road. You're going to the doctor and you're saying, Doc, my back hurts. And your mindset is, well, I'm not getting surgery. He's going to give me a pill, some stretches, some physical therapy, worst case scenario, a shot, and then I'll be fine. And then the surgeon tells you, no, I'm going to have to do this big surgery. It's a back surgery. Do you have any questions? And your mind just goes blank. No, I guess not. Well, then at 2 a.m. with this sleepless night where you're drugged out of your mind, you're sitting there going, fuck yeah, I got a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And so you're calling the doctor's office and saying, what's the pain amount I'm going to be in? Well, what we've heard is this. Well, what's my recovery like? Well, typically patients have this. I was like, how about we actually try to talk to the patients and explain to them what it's going to be like from other patients. And we started a whole program called The Better Way Back, pairing up patients with one another that could share all this information. And it allowed me to as well travel around the country and share my story with people. And that was the best thing about it, was because I thought I was going through my surgery for myself and for my little girl, for my family. And then it turned out that it could affect so many more people, because I started getting messages from people all over the world saying, my back hurts. Am I a candidate for this? Who did you talk to? Who did you go to? Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, just last week, I was on the phone with somebody and said, hey, I'm looking to get this surgery. Can you tell me about it? And over again, it was just, this is my journey. This is what you can expect. And just kind of easing those fears and comforting people. And it was able to turn into something that worked out well for me and Nuvasive as well to do these things.
That's wild, man. That is
just think, had he not grabbed the mic,
had he not taken the microphone,
and just did what he was told. I mean, I don't know.
But again,
you're doing something else for the last 14 years, I guess.
We're seeing the same theme.
It's always the
with
same.
everything that Nate does. It's like, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm going to go for it. I want to do this thing. I'm going to go for it. I'm not going to stop until I get there. The risk that everybody else doesn't want to take, he takes willingly. This is.
Yeah. Dude, luck favors the people who try hard things.
Yeah.
It is 100% true. Like, people are like, oh, you got lucky. Yeah. It's like, well, you probably would have, if not then, another time, because you do hard things and you try to succeed at hard things. Generally, someone will pay you for that.
Yep. Like constant preparation and taking risk when an opportunity presents itself.
And I'll say over and over again how lucky I've been. And I can sit down here and I can write down, well, look at what I overcame and look at this shitty thing and this and that and the other. And I can match that list over and over again with the right coach at the right time, or something that just randomly happened to me that
Sure.
made my life easier.
Sure.
Like when I was leaving Team Quest, Randy Couture had left. The gym was just kind of in a state of flux, and I could see that it wasn't going to end up well. All the athletes were complaining all the time, and I'm not that guy that's going to sit back and complain when I can do something about it. So I stood up and I went to management, Fallis and Matt Lindland. I said, the whole team is unhappy. We don't have a wrestling coach, a jiu-jitsu coach, a kickboxing coach, a boxing coach, a conditioning coach. We're getting surpassed by all these other gyms. We need to reinvest in ourselves so we can do better. Oh, and I set out all sorts of ideas. If you don't want to pay for these coaches, maybe give us a discount on what we're paying here. So if we win, you'll make that money back anyways than if we lost. And I was told, this is our gym. If you don't like it, leave. And pretty much every athlete there all said, oh, well, I guess they told us what's what. And I was like, all right, guys, I'm not going to be that guy. So I went off on my own and kind of formulated my own team and found those coaches to do these things and build it back and put in that time, because it was the investment in myself. And during that period, as I'm coming back from my back surgery, it was a 22-month layoff.
Yeah.
I got knocked out by Franklin, had my back surgery. There was 22 months in that time span. I'm living on credit card, any tiny little sponsorship I can pull up here and there. And I need a boxing coach. I kind of outgrown the boxing coach I was working with. And he said, I've got a great boxing coach for you, Mr. Leonard Trigg. And he's like one of the best here in the Northwest, wanted by everybody. And I go to meet with Mr. Trigg, and he watches my Franklin fight. And he says, I believe I could help you. I think we have some fundamentals we could work on. And what is it that you can afford? I know you just fought and it's been a long time. So what can you afford to pay? And I was so embarrassed that I just said, Coach, I'm literally living on my credit card here, and I've got my little girl and this is an insult, I can afford $20 an hour. And I was just so embarrassed to even say that. And he says, all right, I think I can work with you for that and until you get back on your feet, and then we'll readdress it. And a couple months go by, and he's giving me 2 hours at a shot, just learning these fundamental stuff that I hadn't gotten in the previous 10 years. And every time I'd show up, I'd give him his $20. And after a couple months, he says, Mr. Quarry, until things get turned around with you, I don't think we need that $20. Let me just work with you. And I believe in you, and I want to see you succeed. And it was something that even to this day brings tears to my eyes, because this was the man's job. And he looked at me as a struggling single father at the time who's trying so hard to make this dream come true, and starting over again with a new team and losing my old team and all the old coaches I had. And he's saying, no, I believe in you and I want to help. And it was just, once again, that's luckier than I ever deserved to be. Yeah, I showed up and I worked hard, but without that kindness over and over, where would I be?
But I don't think it's luck, man. Like I know you're looking at it as luck, but like,
it's amazing how many people are willing to help other nice people.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. Like, trust me, if you were a shitty dude, you wouldn't have gotten that offer.
Yeah. Like,
that's funny too, because my coaches never had to hound me to show up for practice.
Yeah.
There was never the phone call, where are you at? And as a matter of fact, 12 years, my career from 26 to 38, 12 years, I missed one practice in 12 years. And I still remember that day, because it was a Friday at my Muay Thai coach's place. We had it scheduled. I fell asleep and slept through the whole thing. He doesn't even bother to call me the next time, and I'm just gone. Next time I see him, he goes, so what happened on Friday? My jaw just dropped. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I can't believe I missed the practice. And he was like, you're good. You needed the sleep. You needed the rest. That's why I didn't call you and bug you. Let it go.
Yeah.
And so that was like 15 years ago. And I'm still like, oh my God, I can't believe I let him down. I missed the practice. But I always did my part.
But I do think, most people, unless they were born wealthy, most people have had rough times, even if they've been born wealthy, you know, family health and
there's always something
relationships and what, you know, but like most people that live like a normal life have been down and out at some point. And that down and out might not look as bad as like, you know, being on the street or destitute or anything, but the fear of not having money, the fear of how am I going to get this done? Like, you know, I've definitely had it. You know, so I think, like, I know from my perspective, when I see somebody that I believe in that is in that situation, I tend to be generous. When I see somebody that just wants to abuse my time, that's a different thing. So I'm sure this guy was like, man, this dude's working his ass off. He's in a rough spot. Like, I can help. I want to. You know, that's not luck. That, you know, that's, you know, character seeing character, you know? So, you know, I mean, obviously luck helps, right? But luck favors the well-prepared, and I think luck favors the kind. And I think people don't talk about kindness enough, empathy enough as a strength. It's looked down upon in business. You know, you look at movies, you look at, you know, any you know, big dick playa talking about the way the world really works. You know, guys that are like all is fair and, you know, and love, war, and business. You know, like I'm not a big fan of those guys. People in general terms that say this isn't personal, it's business. I tend to hate those people. So, you know, yeah, props to you for, you know, I look at it this way: you earned his respect. So anyway,
well, I think I frame it that way because I believe that one of the best ways to be happy is to be grateful. Mm-hmm. If you're grateful for what you've got, what else do you need? And so I try to reframe that to focus on the gratitude that I have for what he gave me and the things that I've been given.
That's why
I'll tell you, I'm my ass off a lot, but I also feel very grateful for the things I've been given.
That's why Albert's happy, because he's grateful for me.
No. No, not grateful for you.
Yeah, I know.
No, but I don't dislike you either.
Oh, thanks, man. That means. All right. So we gotta fast forward to your business, right?
Yeah.
So you know, you had a very successful MMA career. You know, you were one of the guys everybody knew. Big fights. You know,
yep.
for those of you that, you know, don't follow MMA, Anderson Silva is the guy that was, you know, the legendary fighter for the, you know, that held the title for 8 years. If Anderson Silva did not exist, Rich Franklin was that guy. So, like, you know, Nate lost to a guy that basically everybody felt.
Belt holder. Yeah.
Everybody felt, well, but not only a belt holder, everyone basically felt like he was unbeatable.
Yeah. Until
Anderson Silva showed up, and he is like a once in a generation. I still haven't, you know, I don't care what anybody says. I still haven't seen anybody that is Anderson Silva in his prime.
What about Adesanya?
I just don't. Anderson Silva, man, like, he just was out there having fun, destroying people. You know, when he beat Forrest Griffin with like a jab, I was like, oh shit, this guy's not even human. But you know, you only fought like the best guys. I mean, you were always in the hunt. So how do you go from that to a new life without that? Like, I know a lot of fighters struggle with it. So talk about how you go from that to business.
It's tough because you have to come to terms with, no longer as I'm walking to work is there going to be 20,000 people chanting my name.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult, and you lose that camaraderie that comes with the team and everybody working together. And I feel like in a lot of ways it's like a veteran leaving the service, where you know every day what you're going to do, who your brothers are, who your teammates are, what your goal is. And then you go out into the world and all of a sudden you have this freedom, which is really kind of scary because, well, what am I going to do? When do I wake up? What am I eating? What am I eating? All these things. And I went from 12 years, but specifically the previous 8 years of, this is all I'm doing. I'm a fighter. I train, I eat, I sleep, I take care of my little girl, I fight. That's it. To now having this freedom all of a sudden upon me, and not being a part of the big fight camp, not having everybody around me, and the ego of it all just coming into. And yeah, so it was 11 years since my last fight, 11 and a half years ago. And just having to come to terms with that, oh, I've had my time.
Yeah.
But I also wanted it to be I wanted to leave the sport when people still wanted me to fight. I didn't want people shaking their head going, "Oh man,
he's
remember
done.
when?"
He's finished.
Yep.
Oh, that's just sad. Or to move into a smaller organization and just do it for a paycheck.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in the big show, doing the best that I could. And when that time passed, I'm moving on to something else. And it was difficult. I won't kid you, because it's a very hard thing to suddenly leave all of that big fish in the small pond, the world of MMA, and going to the shows and being recognized and knowing in 4 months, man, millions of people are going to be seeing me on TV doing the best thing that I do in the world. And now not so much. But it also becomes embracing that change and looking at, well, what are the next things that I can do? And with my family now, my wife, my 2-year-old toddler, our newborn baby who's 2 weeks old.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah, he's been busy, man.
What can I do for them? Is I want to refocus my life and keep moving forward so I can provide for them and give them the opportunities I didn't have, not necessarily make it easy for them, but give them the opportunities that I didn't have. And then looking at new pathways and things that I understood. I've been in construction my whole life. So that's what I understand. I understand buying a house and fixing up that house and either selling that house or renting that house out. So when money was good, that's where I put my investments, where we have rentals and I deal with tenants and all the repairs. And one of my sponsors, who's done very well for himself, will do a project. We've got 3 condos for sale right now. Just do a small project here and there. And for me, I want this whole latter half of my life to be about freedom and just enjoying my life and working not for the status of working or the new rig or any of that. I want it to be my family and getting to enjoy our lives, because I've worked so damn hard to get here.
No, that is awesome.
That I want to be able to really enjoy this and being able to be at home with my son pretty much every single day. I get to be there for his first steps and the first time he stands up on his own, all of these things. It's something that no amount of money would I sell those memories for.
So you were one of the select few fighters, and there is a very short list, that was planning for the future while you were fighting.
That's pro athletes in general.
Yeah.
It's not
no, but fighters are notoriously bad at this, you know.
I knew the ride was going to end at some point, and he could either kick me off or I could get off in my own choosing. Joe Silva told me one time he wished that he could do a tournament for every UFC, because every fighter thinks that they're going to win and he can pay them shit. It's just
that sounds right. That sounds like Joe.
And so I knew, again, and seeing my father die at 62 with nothing, I'm preparing for the future, and I want to make sure that all of this work was for nothing. And I made some horrible financial decisions. I bought a whole bunch of real estate in Buffalo, New York. I live in Oregon. That was a bad idea. But I looked at when I realized I'd lost all this money and all this time and effort, I said to myself, you know what? At least I had the balls to try it. And if I didn't, then I'd still be working at the sign shop.
Yeah.
And I'd have a nice life. I'd be showing up 40 hours a week to make somebody else some money. But instead, I took my shot. I believed in myself. And again, what was the worst that was going to happen? I was going to fail miserably. Well, then I'll try it again. And I'll learn something from that lesson. Now I know. Don't buy real estate in Buffalo, New York.
or really go to Buffalo, New York for any reason whatsoever.
I'm going to be there in January, so I'll report back.
Yeah.
So how does, we're running low on our time. How does this all culminate in a comic book? That's the unwritten question here, because the real estate construction, you 100% hit the nail on the head. It's something you understood and said, I can be successful here. All right, so your post-fight career, you're in construction, you're doing it. How did you get into comic books? Were you an artist? Like, how did this happen?
Well, as a kid, that was my escape. I would escape into the world of comic books, because not being allowed to participate in any sports, having any friends outside of the Jehovah's Witness organization, I spent a lot of time alone, and that meant a lot of time kind of disappearing into that world of comic books and superheroes. And I just kind of fell in love with that genre. I was a huge, huge Star Wars fan, as were we all back at those times. I was born in 72. I was 5 years old when Star Wars New Hope came out. So for me, that was such a seminal part of my upbringing. And I kind of got back into it in my mid-20s. I became friends with a comic book store owner. I ended up being best man at his wedding. I loved going to San Diego Comic-Con. I love the whole genre of that world of fantasy where heroes exist and they're doing the right thing simply because it's right. And then you get into all the deeper stories into it. There's a lot of incredible literature in the world of comic books. Mouse is a huge one, M-A-U-S, written about a survivor of the Holocaust. It's just incredible stories. So when it came time to tell my story, I wanted to do something with a little bit of flair. And I have something in the works for more of a biographical story, but Zombie Cagefighter is my biographical horror story, where I took my life, what I've been through as a fighter and at the time as a single father, and I threw in zombies. And in my career, I did okay. I won some fights. I lost some fights. At the end of the journey, I did okay for myself. My family's living pretty well. In the zombie cage fighting world, I never quite make it over that hump. I'm still fighting in the small shows, picking pennies out of the dirt, trying to get by, looking for that paycheck. And it gets to the point where, just like every fighter, the promoter tells me, look, man, we can't sell tickets off your name anymore. People are not excited to see you on the card. They're sad. And so I lose a fight, get kicked to the curb. And as I'm leaving, I run into someone that says, hey, I've got something in the works if you want to come by and take a look. And he introduces me to the underground zombie cage fights. If you're willing to put your life on the line, they'll pay you a little bit more money than a small MMA show. The bad news is, if you don't win, the next week you're on the rotten side of the cage. You're the zombie. And so it's that timeline. In every zombie movie I've ever seen, it was always post-apocalypse, a handful of humans surviving a zombie apocalypse. Well, somewhere between now and then, zombies are more of a pandemic that some people deny, that some people agree is an issue. Some people are using it for political terms, things. It's essentially what it is right now. So you have these guys.
My main man was clairvoyant. He knew exactly how the world would handle pandemics and viral outbreaks. Like, that's fake news. It's only real to one half of the country. The other half, it's fake.
Wild times.
But
Wild times right now.
So I was on, and how this kind of started, I was just kind of brainstorming ideas and writing little sketches down and things like that. Well, I was on a channel G4, Attack of the Show. Channel no longer exists. Attack of the Show, I think, is finally coming back, but it's just a big pop culture station.
Yeah.
And they put me down to talk about fights and this and that. And he asked me what my latest thing was, meaning, well, what fights you got coming up? And I said, well, right now I'm working on Zombie Cagefighter, and the rules are pretty simple. For humans, no biting. For zombies, mostly biting. And the producer at the end of the show comes up to me and goes, dude, I love that idea. I want to see everything you've got. And I looked him in the eye and I shook his hand. And I said, great. Well, let me go back home. I'll put together everything for a presentation. I'll come back down and make it to you. Because I had nothing.
You had nothing. I did.
Nothing. So I sat in front of the computer with a 12-pack of beer, half rack. And it was the old box style computer. It was so old and shitty that every once in a while, as I'm typing, I'd look up and the screen was frozen. I had to write down everything that I'd just written, restart the computer, and then retype it. And at the end of it, I had 22 pages written out. I knew how it was going to, at the beginning, I knew the ending. I just needed to fill out the middle. And then I just showed it to some people that were smarter than me, who were in this world, and I got their advice. Well, you need a love interest. Well, I didn't have a love interest. It's a work of fiction. Put in a love interest. And this and that. So I listen to people. And to me, that's one of the keys to success. Ask questions. I just did some tile here in my house. I've been around tile work a lot. I've hired a lot of people to do tile. I know how to do tile roughly. This is my first tile project. So I went to Home Depot and I said, assume I don't even know what tile is. Tell me how to do tile. And so they lined up everything, because I would rather hear more information than not that little piece that I need, because my ego won't allow me to ask questions.
Yep.
So I go to these people in this world and I say, tell me what you think. Tell me what I can do better. and they give me advice, and then I listen to that advice if it's good, solid advice. And then it was a matter of getting together with the right artist, the right team, because putting together a comic book is much more than writing a 22-page short story. Well, that needs to become 6 issues, 6 individual comic book issues. How do I do that? I can't end a book in the middle of a sentence. So I had to work with somebody that does that for a living, and then work with artists who didn't know anything about MMA and fight scenes. So taking pictures of how I want the artwork to be and putting it all together, and really is once again just deciding this is how I want things to be, and I'm just going to keep working on it till it happens. And for this to come to fruition took 11 years from day one. I think I launched issue 0. I launched issue 0 in 2012 at San Diego Comic-Con. I had the show on Spike TV at the time, and they helped me kind of get the word out there and do that. And when I did the issue 0, just kind of a snapshot of the world, the whole goal was, does anyone else think this is cool? And all I heard from everybody was, when's the next issue coming out? So then it was really focusing on the 6 issues, getting that done, and just like the interior artwork is incredible. And that right there, what you're looking at is Dwayne Bang Ludwig fighting 4 zombie children, which when I contacted Dwayne, I said, I want you to be in my comic book fighting zombies. And he goes, oh, this is cool. And I said, wait, it's children, like 7-year-olds. It's like, oh, and you're going to kill them all very violently.
Well, they're already dead, so it's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't count if it's zombies.
Yeah. Dude.
So with this world, it was just, once again, seeing my vision, believing in myself, getting people around me. And what you said before about the kindness that others give when they're excited about who that person is. This cover is an actual painting done by a man named Alex Horley. And I met him down at San Diego Comic-Con as I was looking for phenomenal artists. And his artwork is just incredible. If you know the name Frazetta, he's very Frazetta-like, just phenomenal. And we start talking and become friends. And he says, I'd really love to do a cover for your book. It's like, dude, I do too. I would love that. I can't afford you, man. You're way up here, and I've got, my budget is a lot lower. And he said, no, I want to do this for you. And once again, it became just a kindness that I could never repay.
It must be because you're so lucky.
Yeah. Lucky.
I feel grateful. And so the big news now that nobody really knows.
You're hearing it for the first time here, right after Thanksgiving.
I'm in talks right now with a major movie studio to do a animated series.
No way.
Zombie Cagefighter. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
That is awesome. That is
right
great.
Now we're putting together the character design so we can put together a small animation so we can pitch it to the HBOs and the Netflixes and things like that. But everybody there just seems really excited about it, and they're really good people to be working with. So I'm excited.
Listen, man, zombies are hot. They're in every single category. There's a Disney channel. I think it's called like iZombie.
Really?
Yeah, my daughter watches it. I'm like, what am I watching? Okay. I have a 6-year-old, so I've seen like Disney. Like,
I mean, I made a bad zombie movie once, so I know people like zombies.
I know. I'm just saying, like in regards to like the zombie spectrum, like it can be anywhere from kids all the way to like a hyper-violent.
To like hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge,
and
man.
The cool thing about Zombie Cagefighter is it's Rocky meets The Walking Dead, essentially.
Yeah.
And with Rocky, when I think about Rocky, it had boxing in it. And boxing was the hook. But at the end of the day, it was about this down and out guy who had one final chance to make something of himself. Mm-hmm. And all he wanted to do was go the distance with the champ. He didn't even win the fight.
Yep.
But he knew he wasn't nothing after going the distance. And in Zombie Cagefighter, it's not this grand story of this guy who's on top of the world and comes out there, starts kicking the shit out of zombies. It's this down and out loser that's seen every single dream of his die except for one. He's got to make his little girl have a better life than he had. And if he has to step into the world of Zombie Cagefighter to make that happen, so be it. And I think that's really the story of us all, every parent. What are you not willing to go through to provide for your kids?
Yep.
And for me, it was, I'll step into that cage and I'll face down these odds and I'll take these fights if that means that I can send my little girl to college, if I can provide her a better life than I had, that she doesn't have to work at these menial jobs. She can have a fulfilling career and a fulfilling life. And in the zombie cage fighting world, it's just that one final chance to do that, for a father to take care of his little girl.
What advice would you give to somebody that wants to get into the comic book world?
Oh man, it's difficult. It's a lot of it really depends on what they're coming to the door with. A story is kind of the easiest thing because people can just sit down and think of a story. Whether it's a good story or not, that's another matter. But it's very clear to see when artwork isn't good.
Yeah.
So if you're coming to the table with incredible artwork, boy, half your battle is already done. If all you have is a story, then you have to find the right artist. Artists are expensive. Artists have their own style. You have to find somebody that's going to mesh with your style, your vision of how you want to tell this. And then they're also artists. So me coming from the world of fighters and construction, I would be like,
you should know
hey,
that
man,
our producer off screen is an artist, and he's shaking his head right now.
And this is fun. This is great because Nate already discussed how he did not hear our intro. What was our intro about? The challenge of working with revisions with artists.
The challenge
that creative vision differences.
He's an artist. I will speak to him, Dusty. Hey, buddy. Man, I really like what you've done here. This is just amazing. The lines here and the spatial contrast. Oh my God, this is incredible. And I'm just saying if I was to give one note, and again, you're awesome.
It's that this sucks.
It's that the whole thing is bad.
Read the script because this looks nothing like what I wrote.
Oh, man. And that is our experience with artists.
Yeah.
That summed up.
But we are a little different here.
Yeah.
We tell every artist that we've got a pretty good crew of artists here now.
Yeah.
I think we've got 5 now, and then a bunch of videographers, which are basically also artists with the same kind of the same exact attitude. But like everybody that we hire here, we're like, look, you're not going to get nice feedback. The feedback's going to be like, hey, this really sucks. Here's why.
It just doesn't feel like me.
Yeah. Like, so we're pretty brutal here. So our artists, I would say, are a little different than most artists.
Yeah.
Well, and the artist I ended up working with is just perfect. He's in his 40s and he's like, this is my job. This is how I do things. And he had very set parameters for what he expected. And I had set parameters for what I expected. And it was very business-like when it needed to be and became a friendship.
That's awesome.
But it had to be that where at the end of the day, you work for me.
Yeah.
So you have to do what I tell you. And your only real, your power here is just to say, I quit. Well, I don't want that. So how can we work together to make this where you understand my vision and you want to achieve it? Mm-hmm. And then once you get all that done, and I had to work with somebody, and I found another guy who was just a phenomenal guy by the name of Jamie Rich to help take my short story and stretch it out into 6 issues. And I went to him at the end when he would send me the issue, and I'd say, hey, I want to make these changes here and there. And he'd go, you know how to type, right? So go ahead and change it. I was like, awesome. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to hear, because I didn't want to have to go back to you with every single little note like I've had to do with other guys. And he really understood, once again, I'm being hired to turn this into 6 issues. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to outline it. And if you're not happy, if it's something you don't think you can do, tell me and I'll change it. But if it is, it's your project, man. You fix it.
Yeah.
And for me, that was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to deal with a colorist. You have to deal with a letterer, all these things. And then you get into the publication of it when you're going to do the printing.
Yep.
What I found from every printer out there, every comic book producer out there pretty much had the same pitch. You pay for everything. When your product is done, we'll market it for you. We're going to charge you a shit ton of money to do that. And then we're going to keep 90% of the money. At which point I just said, I don't need that. me being me, I come to the table with a fan base already, with a recognizable name in my small little fish pond.
Yeah.
So I could go to a Comic-Con, put out a TV screen just showing my fights all day long with T-shirts behind me and my comic books, and sell my books. So for me, the answer was to self-publish. And then once the world opens back up again, now I can go back out to the shows and I can sell my book. And again, I got really fortunate that I'm friends with a guy by the name of Randy Bowen, who's the #1 superhero sculptor in the world. And he made me a Zombie Cagefighter sculpture. And now Randy Bowen, we've been friends now for a few years, but 20 years ago, I was buying his statues off the wall at comic book stores. Yeah. Now I have my own Randy Bowen Zombie Cagefighter statue. And I made only 100 of them. So it's one of the lowest.
That's wild, man.
Ever.
How lucky you are.
I almost never sell these. There's none online. I don't have any on eBay. I think I've sold like 3 on eBay. And every time I sell one, I'm like, I'm going to miss you so much, number 56.
That is awesome. The story of him. All right. I didn't know if you had any questions because I wanted to.
You can go ahead and do what you want to do.
Oh, no, we're good to go. So the story of him that Nate just told about recruiting an illustrator is actually often used in the software world too. So when people say, I have an idea and I want to make an app, and you go to get money, the #1 thing a person with money will say is, well, can you convince someone who's really smart and talented that they agree with you? It's like the first test. Are you like going to be the leader? Because remember, people don't want to back hobbies. They want to back something that gets them massive ROI and cash in pocket. So the first test is, can you lead? Can you recruit? Can you get someone to work with you? And then generally when you're a non-technical co-founder and a technical person, you're going to butt heads, right? And so you're going to have to, they like almost like watching you, observing, kind of just exactly the way you described your relationship with an illustrator. And so what happens is with like people that are investors, when they meet people that can't recruit a technical co-founder, they will never give you the money because they'll be like, you can't convince even one person of merit to work with you. Why would money help? Because you're probably like a shitty person. Like, so now you can pay this guy. This person's not going to help you out. They're going to collect a couple checks and be like, yo, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah. Or if not a shitty person, maybe it's just a shitty idea and this person's just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, there's more reasons it will not work than it will, right? Like, so if you can't, because people I know come to you and like they say, well, I got this idea, but I need somebody else and I need money. It's like, well, can you convince someone that can do the skill? Like in your case, illustration. In my example, software development. Like you have to be able to work with people that you can't get along with otherwise.
Yeah, Albert and my wife give me a lot of crap for helping people, but one thing I definitely have gotten better at over the years is like screening who I will help. Yeah. So like if somebody comes to me and they're like 80% of the way there, but they need that little boost, I'm generally on board with helping them. But in the old days, somebody would come to me with, I have this idea. I have no money. I have done no work.
No one believes in me.
And I need these 43 things.
And I can't recruit anybody.
Help me. And I'm like, well, here's what you need to do. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, I don't know how to do X. I'm like, well, let me help you with X. And, so I've definitely improved that in my life. But yeah, I mean, people that are at it, that are always trying to solve problems, that are making progress, like those are the people that like I want to invest time in.
There you go. Clearly your illustrator saw the same in you. Good. The zombie cage. You know what we should do? We send, if you can. Wait, you only have a 56 copies, or you only have 56 copies of the
56
the
of the
doll?
Sculpture.
Oh, the sculpture. Okay, I called it a doll. Sorry.
I did 100 of the Zombie Cagefighter book. I have 3,000.
So send us one. We should just read it for one of our episodes.
Just
us
slow,
reading it.
like
Wait a minute.
with like a really
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna want to buy it.
It was like, my 14th year.
Nate, it was awesome having you on the show, man. Thanks for sharing your story. It is with Nick promised me this would be one of the more unique stories.
I did.
For sure. This has been a wild ride for me to hear this. I mean, obviously you lived it.
So, one thing I want to bring up about Nate that is maybe different from some of the other entrepreneurs that we've had on is, there are a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past that are entrepreneurs that that, you know, they have had a lot of issues in the past. They've had, maybe they, maybe they were homeless for a little while after they left the military. Post-traumatic stress, all kinds of different things and challenges, whether it was relationship issues or, alcohol issues or, but they have this like thing that they had to overcome. And I think that Nate is the perfect example of you're never out. You can be down a number of times, but you're never out if you keep trying, if you believe that you can do it. I just thought it was like the perfect example. And actually, the bad things that have happened to him are the fuel for what drove him to success. And so, like it's an old, Stoic philosophy, but basically, the obstacle is the way, that the things that happen to you, you don't just look at them and say, this is a bad thing that I overcame, but you actually take it and you use it as fuel. You say, hey, this bad thing happened to me, and because this bad thing happened to me, I've been given the gift of overcoming this adversity, which makes me stronger, which teaches me more about myself, which teaches me more about what I'm capable of. And I think that, if you're a wannabe entrepreneur out there, if you're a current entrepreneur going through some shit, if things are hard, on multiple fronts, family, business, whatever, just know that there is a path forward. And the most interesting entrepreneurs have overcome a lot of different things in order to become successful. So I thought Nate, in that way, was the most interesting guest we've had thus far, because those are some obstacles. So
yeah, having a family doesn't believe in you, being raised a specific way, no access to income or limited access to income, it's super challenging, and
essentially aren't allowed to do any of the things that you want to do, where you lose your entire family and friend circle.
Yeah, that's a mind-boggling thing to overcome. His story is pretty wild.
Yeah. So that was a really cool one for me, and we'll see you guys next week.
Till next time.